Corey Lee Boxing, and we are back with another banger. So please smash that like button, you guys, and subscribe. And yeah, man, we're gonna definitely talk this boxing. Shout out to Gary Russell Jr. And wow, man, and Mark Magsayo, man, he did an awesome job. He was coming forward all night. Gary Russell Jr. looked like he had a injury coming into the fight. He definitely had caught an injury in the fourth round. Leading up into the fourth round, it was a pretty good back and forth action. Um, Up into the injury, I had it, I think 2-2, or either it was like 2-1. I think it happened in the fourth or fifth round. But yeah, man, it looked like it was some type of shoulder injury. Maybe his arm came out the socket. Um, and another number, you guys, that leading up into this fight, you know, Gary Russell threw about 37 jabs per round. And he only threw about 64 jabs in the entire fight. So that should show you what type of injury he had. And, that injury can affect you. That injury can definitely affect you. It can affect your arms, and it can affect the jab. If you can't fight with a jab, then, you pretty much, I feel like, Gary Russell can't do what he wants to do. If he can't use his jab, Gary Russell has a really, really good jab at that featherweight division. At 126. He's been there. He's been the longest reigning champion. But wow, for injury, we see Lomachenko had an injury in the Teofimo Lopez fight. Now we see Gary Russell having an injury in his Magnus Sayo fight. And so, wow, both guys have definitely been injured. But moving on forward after the fourth round and he got injured, the fight continued. Magsayo, kept coming forward, kept making it ugly for Gary Russell. Gary Russell was using his left hand the whole night. It got to a point where Gary Russell Jr. was literally depending on his left hand entirely. It was wild to see. But he did finish the fight. He hung true. He didn't give up. He was a warrior in there. And he knew something was wrong in the fourth round. He could tell it. He winced. I thought he was gonna go down. He stood up on his feet. Um, and yeah, man, I mean, if you're Mark Marcel and Gary Russell Jr. has an injury in the fourth round and only has one hand is visible, why don't you go to finish the fight? Like, I don't understand that. I mean, one judge had it a draw, I believe, and the other judge, and then the other two judges, I believe, had it to Mark Marcel. So he won by mid decision. But yeah, smash that like button as soon as you guys come in here. You guys definitely get these likes up. But yeah, man, it was a back and forth battle. And like I said, towards the later rounds, Gary Russell Jr. was only using his left hand entirely. And so that made a big, that made a big decision on the end of the fight and the way it ended. It went to unanimous decision. And like I said, it was two judges had it Mark Marcel's way and one judge had it a draw, I believe. But yeah, man, all in all, it was a pretty good fight. Both fighters came in there and gave it their all. I would love to see a rematch. I think a rematch, Gary Russell Jr. with both of his hands, but not making any excuses for him. But if he does have a rematch clause, which I'm not 100% sure he does, but I don't see why he wouldn't have a rematch clause. Um, but stating that if Gary Russell Jr. does have a rematch clause, I would definitely rematch Mark Masayo if he wants to stay at that 126 division. I heard that he might want to move up. He did miss weight on the initial weigh-in. So, that all of that could play a factor, into his decision and what he wants to do. Mark Masayo is definitely a good fighter. Um, can he, defend the belt and, have some good wins at 126? I think he can. Shakur Stevenson moved up to 130. That's a big, 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 I guess you could say lion in the division. Um, I would pick Shakur Stevenson over Mark Masayo after the performance I just seen. A younger, more, I'm gonna just say more younger, more fresher, a guy that wouldn't be hurt. And Shakur Stevenson, I think with Shakur Stevenson, what versus Mark Masayo, I think I would favor Shakur Stevenson. But everybody at 126 right now, for Mark Masayo, I would love to see a Leo Santa Cruz versus Mark Masayo. We should have seen a Gary Russell. It's all contingent on if if he can get this rematch clause. If he can get this rematch clause, then we'll see a second fight, a rematch that we should probably definitely see anyways. But it's a good fight, Gary Russell, where does he go from here? He might have to have surgery. That'll put him out even more. Um, could we have seen the last of what we knew of Gary Russell Jr.? Is this the last of him in his reign at the top at 126? You know, a lot of people say Gary Russell Jr. is the best fighter at 126. After this loss, do people still think so? I'm gonna go with no. Um, people seeing that he can get hit. But like I said, it's all kind of based on him having one hand as well too. He only had one hand in this fight. It was a very tough fight, and yeah, man, I just really, really, truly think that you know guys like Mark Masayo, with guys like him, young, hungry, promoted by Manny Pacquiao. I think he did good. I think he did good for what, it's not his fault that Gary Russell Jr. got hurt. Gary Russell Jr.'s, said a couple things before the fight started about him being hurt. And, I think Mark Masayo did what he was supposed to do. He came in there, he was very active. And I think just the accumulation of punches just won the fight for him. He had two hands, the other guy had one that he was using. Like I said, it's not Mark Masayo's fault. And if they were to do a rematch, man, that would be a tough fight. It's like a real 50-50 fight if a rematch happened. Because for real, Mark Masayo was hitting Gary Russell Jr. when he had two good hands. So we're going to have to see, man. We're going to definitely have to see. Man, it was a good fight though. For as long as it lasted, it was definitely a good fight. Um, but yeah, man, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Please smash the hell out of this like button, you guys, and subscribe. And until next time, you guys, peace.